Picture the scene. You've been referred to a specialist for an autism diagnosis. You attend numerous sessions over weeks or months, answering the specialist's probing questions about your past life, reliving painful memories and digging deep into your vocabulary to find the right words to describe your emotions. Finally, it's over. It's your last session and you're expecting the diagnosis that you hope will help put your difficult life into perspective and allow you to move forward. Then they drop the bombshell. They tell you you can't be autistic because you're too verbal. Because you answered their questions to the best of your ability, they deny you the resolution you hoped for. Not only is that a disappointment for the many people it's happened to, it helps to demonstrate a huge misunderstanding of autistic people by the professionals who stand at the gates of diagnosis. Let's talk about the verbal spectrum. What does verbal communication actually mean? Its roots are in the Latin verbum and verbalis, meaning just words. When we speak or when we write with words, we communicate verbally. Braille is verbal communication, as is Morse code, just using a different representation of the alphabet. Whether it's sounds made by the mouth or symbols that make up words, it is verbal. When autism specialists talk about verbal ability, they have their own special meaning though. To them, verbal communication is spoken communication, but even then it's not clearly defined. There are plenty of autistic people who are veritable chatterboxes, constantly talking with recognisable structured language, who are still classed as non-verbal. When someone is diagnosed as non-verbal, what they actually mean is someone who doesn't speak, or speaks in a fashion I don't understand. The trouble with current diagnosis guidelines is that they're not based on the way a mind works, but on opinions of how we express ourselves externally. If the diagnostician cannot understand the way we communicate, or they think we express ourselves too well, it will impact their assessment. This wouldn't be a problem if those assessments didn't shape people's futures, determining what opportunities and services will be available to us, and the way others will interact with us, possibly for the rest of our lives. At one time, a person who didn't use spoken language would be described in English as mute. Whether it was an impairment that made speech physically impossible, a hearing impairment, a conscious decision, or fear that prevented them from speaking, the catch-all term mute made for a convenient box. These days, people who have all the physical attributes for speech but don't use spoken language in a way their assessor understands are generally classed as non-verbal. What that fails to acknowledge, though, is that most people classified as such still understand spoken language. They know what is being said to them and about them, but they don't answer in the same way. When allowed the appropriate tools and patience, many communicate very well in non-spoken forms. For this reason, the autistic community and some more progressive professionals prefer to use the more accurate term non-speaking. When assessing for an autism diagnosis, many professionals are looking for either non-speaking characteristics or what they regard as a difficulty in using speech. Signs that they look for include unusual pronunciation, repetition, quotation, hesitance or lack of confidence, sing-song tone, unclear diction, and inappropriate language. Now, there's no argument that all those can be present in autistic people. It was observed back in the 1940s that wordplay like spoonerisms, puns, compound words, nonsense words, homonyms and rhyming are all common amongst autistic people of all needs and abilities. In my dealings with other autists, we often toy with language as a source of humour. Even the name of this channel, Autistic, is a compound word with a distinct meaning. Would this be counted as unusual pronunciation or nonsense words, or be seen for the game that it is? Spoken language is dependent on many factors. Vocabulary is an obvious one. Vocabulary can be influenced by education, but also by other factors. The average native English speaker has an active vocabulary of around 20,000 words. That's the words we would generally use in everyday spoken and written communication. But we also have an inactive vocabulary of a further 40,000 words. Those are words we've encountered and understand, but never or very rarely use ourselves. Many autistic people are hyperlexic, the literal opposite of dyslexic. We learned to read very young, often self-taught, and had reading ages well in advance of our childhood peers. We often consume books at an astonishing pace and absorb it all. A hyperlexic person is far more likely to use words in their active vocabulary that most people would not. Now, whilst some assessors would observe use of such words and put a tick in the inappropriate language box, others would see it as a sign of intelligence and advanced language skills. It's not an objective observation, it's a subjective opinion. Whether it's interpreted as a sign of autism or a sign that someone could not be autistic is dependent upon the prejudices and opinion of the assessor. How about hesitance and lack of confidence? Let me ask you a question. Do I seem hesitant to you? Do I seem to be lacking in confidence? There is a contextual aspect to our confidence and flow when speaking to others, a situational influence that is rarely considered during diagnosis. When work colleagues of mine are asked to do a presentation, most of them are terrified of the prospect. Many of the managers I've worked with have listed making announcements or delivering training as the worst part of their jobs. They even go on courses and read self-help books to boost their confidence and skills. But the same people will happily spend hours in idle chit-chat about the weather, the football results, or a workmate's messy love life. Many autistic people, myself included, are the exact opposite. We can be confident and eloquent when addressing an audience or a camera, but be lost for words in everyday conversation or a formal meeting. With an audience, we are sharing our knowledge, often our special interests, and if you've ever got one of us talking about what interests us, you know how much we can talk about it. Put me in a social situation with people gossiping or sharing uninformed opinions, and I'm stumbling in the dark. Faced with rhetorical small talk, I can't think of answers. Ask me to play along whilst others around me are throwing around platitudes, and I panic. In formal situations, I don't know how to play the game either. So much of what we say in formal encounters is determined by social conventions and status games that make little sense to me. It affects my ability to be understood by others. What you see on your screen right now is not necessarily the same person you might work with or meet in the street. Take me out of this context, and I may not be who you think I am. The verbal spectrum, like the autism spectrum, is not a straight line. It doesn't go from non-verbal at one end to hyperverbal at the other. It's a blend of many different influences. We recognise some of them as characteristics in non-autistic people, yet when it comes to autism diagnosis, far too many professionals take a less nuanced, black and white approach. One cannot be too verbal to be autistic, because verbal ability is influenced by far too many factors. People who express themselves in detail on paper may be silent in company, and people who speak eloquently in some circumstances may be lost for words in others. Like so many aspects of autistic life, the professionals who decide on our diagnosis and have so much power to direct the course of our lives need to listen more and theorise less. Nobody understands autistic minds more than autistic people. We're more than just a list of behaviours for others to pass judgment on. We're living, breathing, thinking people with feelings and potential as important as anyone else's. Put your opinions away. stick your theories on the back burner, and pay attention to us, however we choose to communicate. Thank you for watching. For more videos about autistic life, please click on the left to subscribe and help the channel grow, or on the right for another video, or visit autismatic.com.